The Right Church, From a Seeker to a Finder, written by Peter Hoover of Ontario, Canada, in the late 1970s, published in 2021 by Metamorphose Publishing of Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, USA. Chapter 10 of 16. 1 foot to stand on. It should have gone smoothly and well, as simple as unplugging a cord from an outlet, but it did not. Periodically, during January 1978, I needed to clear our lane with a snowblower. It had kept on snowing intermittently during the night, and to get to work in the morning, I laboriously needed to clear the premises. Not a problem, but on the last Saturday of the month, Dad and I needed to haul a load of trash to the dump. Jacques had returned to Quebec. We all missed him, and now my Saturdays had become much busier again. Dad helped me to detach the snowblower from our small Massey tractor. We had a larger one, a Super 90, to do the plowing, but it needed lots of either to get it cranked up on cold mornings. Fumbling about with mitts on our hands, it happened. I did not blame Dad, but while trying to detach the 3-point hitch, I asked him to move a lever. He pulled too hard, and the snowblower jerked upwards. Trying to correct it, he pushed it too far the other way, and kerboom, the whole thing came down on my foot. I cannot remember how long it had been since I had screamed, but this time, as old as I was, I did, fair and square. Not even a question. I hopped off to the car while Dad ran ahead of me to the house to get his wallet and keys. I had broken a few bones before, but nothing ever hurt nearly as bad as this time. X-rays at the hospital revealed the fact that I had crushed and broken 3 of my metatarsal bones of my left foot. Until then, I never even knew I had them. One thing shone clearly through the pain: no more work for a while. No longer working neither at home or at the Taves, I turned to reading, and reading, until I got bored to tears. Nights became long because I dozed off during the day and couldn't sleep after midnight. One good thing came of it, though. I had much time to reflect, to pray, to work on attitudes while exercising the strength it takes to keep on choosing the best way, in spite of having really strong urges to do exactly the opposite. Then, to my shock and horror, I woke up one night, 3 in the morning, by the loud snores of an old man sleeping in what used to be Norman's bed in my room. Would anyone explain? Peering through the half-light of the city's glow, I discerned what had happened. Jessie Rora had gone to sleep in Norman's bed, no mistaking. But how did that come about? Dad must have let him in. Of course. Why didn't they put him back in the guest room where Uncle Tillman always slept whenever he came? Jessie Rora had mental problems. Why on earth had they decided to put him into my bedroom? Talk of an unhappy camper. I was one now. I spent the following 2 hours planning a serious consultation with my parents in the morning, but it never came to pass. Jessie had grown up Reformed Mennonite, the Harites we called them, an extremely plain yet vocal group that felt they were the only real Christians on earth. We all knew what had happened with Jessie. As a young man, he had fallen in love with a girl of the same group, Dulcie Rice. Dulcie's mother, however, wouldn't hear of it. She did not like Jessie, and he never got to first base with their courtship. Instead, Dulcie, induced to marry someone else, turned sick. She became an invalid, in fact, while Jessie, feeling so sorry for her, lost his mind, off and on. Now in his 40s, Jessie had tried all sorts of cures. Joining the Pentecostals, he had driven down to Louisiana to listen to Jimmy Swaggart. So moved by that evangelist's words, he had thrown his wallet onto the offering plate when it came around. The Swaggart team had returned his wallet without any money, so he needed to call back to Canada for help in getting home. On another occasion, Jessie had tried to lose himself. He had hopped into his car and drove all night, following only gravel roads in the dark, hoping he could start a new life with a new name after showing up in a place where no one knew him. His plan miscarried. To his chagrin, at morning light, he found himself driving right into St. Catherine's on the Pelham Road, only a short distance from where he lived. Thinking of all this, I got dressed and left my room before Jessie woke up, but because of my foot, I could not escape to the barn. Instead, by the time Mom showed up, he had also come lumbering down the stairs, all big smiles and full of apologies. I couldn't sleep alone in my house last night, he told us. An evil spirit was plaguing me, and he was showing himself in my room. I saw him. He had bright red eyes and a tail. Mom clattered her saucepan and silverware with unaccustomed vigor, and tried to change the subject. John, even with your crutches, can you reach this new can of shortening from the top shelf? Easier than me getting my step stool. Jessie did not get the hint. The devil was telling me I was no match for him. He owned me already, and all I needed was to die so I could serve him forever, but I did not listen to him. Dad had entered the room by now. So I knew if I could just share the rest of the night with a blessed and redeemed brother in the Lord, the evil one could not catch me. Thank you, John, for your presence, dear brother. You saved my life from destruction. I caught Dad's expression, and knew what he was just about to say, but he did not get it done in time. Can I just keep on sleeping here? Jessie pleaded. At least for a while. I don't want to go back to where I was, and I don't want to try sleeping again without a fervent Christian at my side. No question, Jessie needed help. I realized that, but until now I had never sensed any personal gift in sharing my bedroom with a deranged man, especially with one being old enough to be my dad. We'll see how we can work things out, Dad calmly assured Jessie, but for the time being, you'll come with me and help with the chores. I actually need help with John out of commission. Nellie had much to say when she learned of our new boarder. She, however, found it more amusing than I did. At least if he lives and eats here, we'll make sure he doesn't have to eat his cornflakes with water instead of milk. He never had to do that, I objected. He's just stingy. Will he keep licking his plate and silverware? Nellie still found it funny, but Mom saw the issue from another angle. I don't feel comfortable with Jessie sleeping in your room, she looked my way. What will you do if he gets wild in the middle of the night? You with a broken foot? We'll have to find a better solution. None of us needed to use our imagination. We remembered only too well how it went some years ago while Norman still lived at home. Jessie Rora lived alone on the farm just behind our Dorchester meeting house, an old, somewhat decrepit place with a large old barn. We had rented it some years ago for our capons, very large roosters that had lost their masculinity. There, one morning, Norman found Jessie busily tearing down his house. Norman had heard the commotion from the barn. Thundering bangs and booms with the sound of crumbling plaster came from Jessie's house. Norman rushed in to see what had gone wrong. There he found Jessie halfways up the stairs with a sledgehammer knocking out the studs along with everything else he could swing at. Fortunately, Jessie had not demolished the telephone. Norman grabbed it and called the police. They came in a hurry from Dorchester, and with Norman's help, they got Jessie into the back seat of their car. The police asked Norman to hop in as well. He understood and complied. Jessie was a large man with muscles not to be trifled with. En route to St. Catherine's, however, he did not use his fist. He used his teeth. Suddenly, in a flash, he bit the policeman sitting before him, the one who was driving, and sunk his teeth deep into the back of the man's neck. I can't imagine sleeping one wink with that guy in the room. Bertha had appeared as well. I'm not taking him out there, don't you worry, but the only place for the likes of him is exactly at Bethania, where I work. I'm just a secretary, but our staff is fully equipped in handling violent patients. Then, looking at me, she continued, while John is definitely not. Uncle Dan scolded Dad for taking Jessie in, but he also knew that one could not coax our unwieldy neighbor into doing anything he did not like. What he really wants, Dad explained, while sitting in the Sterneman's living room the following Lord's Day, is to go to a Christian community out past Brockville along the St. Lawrence. He has heard of the place and thinks they could help him. By all means, Uncle Dan exclaimed. Take him out there. It can't hurt him. Who knows? Dad was not so sure. I thought it was a Roman Catholic monastery or something like that. But it isn't. Jessie had just overheard the last statement as he stepped in from a walk along Lakeshore Road. They used to be Catholic, but now, with a new bunch of people coming from Texas and Massachusetts, they have turned Anglican. Church of England, you know, and their focus is prayer. What I need is constant prayer. a crowd of serious Christians praying all around me all the time, and the evil one will not be able to get his foot in the door. Everything came together on the following days, and Dad left with Jesse on Wednesday. To avoid the Toronto traffic, Dad and Jesse took the trains from Hamilton all the way out to Brockville, where members of the community picked them up. For the moment, it seemed Jesse might have found his niche. At home, relieved to have my room to myself again, I found Dad's descriptions of the community at Brockville fascinating. "It's a huge place," Dad told us when he came home. "The whole community lives together on a campus that made me think of Brock University itself." "Do they operate like the Bruderhof?" Nellie wanted to know. "Are they plain?" "Not necessarily," Dad said, "but they also run a boarding school with several hundred students from elementary through high school. The campus lies between Brockville and Maitland along the St. Lawrence, a beautiful situation, and I liked it a lot. The whole community has become a caring and healing facility for people who have suffered abuse, neglect, or mental trauma. By the way, John," he added, "I picked up a book there, The 7-Story Mountain by Thomas Merton, a New Zealander who grew up in France. If you don't like it, throw it out. I read some of it on the way home on the train and found it captivating." To be sure, the book caught my interest, and more. It vividly described the spiritual journey of a young man finding his way to the Lord from an agnostic and totally worldly background. But had Dad really read far enough in it to realize its conclusion? I doubted that. Thomas Merton had become an apologist of communal living in a Roman Catholic context, pretty much what Jacques had been telling me during his time at our farm. Real Christianity does not lie in choosing this group or another, these writers were telling me. It lies in finding Christ through serious contemplation. I liked that approach, but could a follower of Christ live like that successfully, honoring God, even in a Roman Catholic setting? I was not sure. Several nights later, however, pausing on the landing en route to our bedrooms, I told Nellie, "The book 7-Story Mountain has become my book of the year. Finding Christ, not just the church. Is it possible that we plain people have lost our way spiritually, while others have found it?" "I don't know," Nellie said, "but I do think we have wasted far too much time on trivial things, like which color of car we should drive, or exactly what kind of clothes we should wear, while ignoring the sins of hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envies, and who knows what all else amongst us. I think our focus has shifted. We have tried too hard to keep our sacred traditions together, while ignoring eternity and God." She startled me. "You sound like a philosopher," I told her. We both laughed, but I kept on thinking of what she said, long after I had thumped up to my room with my unhandy crutches. 6 weeks at least, the specialist had told me. It takes that long for your metatarsals to mend, and unless you wait to put pressure on them, you'll be sorry for the rest of your life. I had never known I owned metatarsal bones, but now with 3 of them broken, I had learned a lot in a hurry, some of it in unexpected ways. Then, gazing out the kitchen window, on the last Friday of February, a slushy and gray afternoon, I saw Dr. J. Winfield Fretz's car coming up our lane. Not a physician, but a professor and president of the Conrad Grebel College at Waterloo. After greeting Mom, Dad wasn't home at the time, he turned to me. "I heard what happened to you," he told me, "and I knew you'd be killing time for a while, so I thought of a book I should give you." I was impressed. A busy man like him coming to see the likes of me, an old order Mennonite boy. We had always hit it off pretty good, yet I did not know that he cared that much for people in need. Several years earlier, Dr. Fretz, as we called him, had taken an interest in my writings. He had seen some of them and encouraged me to write more. He seriously wanted me to learn how to do that in the most effective way, and he hoped, vainly, I guess, that I would someday show up as a student at the college. The Fretzes regularly visited our farm. Dad and he discussed a lot of things, but I was all the more surprised when he, no longer a young man, climbed up the loft to help me to throw down hay for the cows. He told me a lot about his childhood in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where he had grown up in the deep-run Mennonite community. Now, without a question, he already knew I had stopped going to school and guessed accurately how I felt about it. He also knew and understood Dad's position. Dad thought all higher education was exactly that, too high, too worldly in other words, for any real Christian to take part in it. Both Dad and Mom worried about Dr. Fretz paying this much attention to me, fearing that all of this would do nothing other than feed my vanity. I tried to tell them that the more one learns, the more insignificant one becomes in one's own estimation. Nellie, while washing cows, had chanced upon a really good quote. We washed our cows' udders with an iodine solution and dried them with pieces of old newspaper. The quote said, "The larger the island of knowledge, the longer the shoreline of wonder." I loved that. I quoted it often, but Mom and Dad kept their reservations. There are two sides to every coin, Dad would tell me, but after one of Dr. Fretz's visits, where he particularly liked something I wrote, Dad grudgingly admitted, "Well, it's an ill wind that blows no good." He was smiling at the time, and I appreciated what he said, and now Dr. Fretz came with a book. "I hope you won't mind if I give you a well-worn book," he told me. "It was published in 1937, but I particularly want you to have it. I think you'll be just the person to know what to make of it." I was immensely pleased. Entitled The Following of Christ, it was written by Geert Groot, founder of the Brothers of the Common Life established at Deventer in the Netherlands in the 1300s. I also noticed it was translated and now published in English by Joseph Malaise S.J., with a little Celtic cross on the back side of the title page. It took me a bit to decipher the Latin words beside the cross. Imprimatur, ecclesiastical permission to print, by Cardinal Hayes, Archbishop of New York. After Dr. Fretz left, I noticed he had written something personal into it for me. "With the prayerful wish that the thoughts in this book may nurture your soul as they have mine. In Christian love, J. Winfield Fretz." Without further delay, I plunged into the text. All manner of thought-provoking ideas, written almost like proverbs. The joy of a good man is in the testimony of a good conscience. Have a good conscience, and you will always have joy. A good conscience can bear very many things, and is very happy even under adversity. An evil conscience is ever fearful and uneasy. You rest sweetly when your conscience does not reproach you, and you rejoice only when you do what is right. The wicked never have true happiness, nor enjoy true peace, for, as the Lord says, "There is no peace to the wicked." Isaiah 48:22 and 57:21. Those powerful words, no matter where they came from, hit me between the eyes. Only too well did I know how many times my conscience had tried to tell me things, and I ignored it. At the moment, I felt like I stood in the clear with God and with others, but what about our whole church situation? Was I guilty for entertaining all kinds of desires that Mom and Dad would have found lustful, even sinful? What about the Mennonite brethren? Or education? What about the plain life itself? Mom and Dad had not stayed as plain as their own parents and grandparents. Isn't it normal for newer generations to become a bit less plain than the ones before? All sorts of questions came to me through this medieval text. Yes, my conscience spoke to me through it, but I received it from a General Conference Mennonite, the worldliest of them all. It was written by a Roman Catholic and published by the Jesuit order itself. I knew what the letters S.J. meant after the publisher's name. He was a Jesuit, a member of the Society of Jesus, the very people that persecuted our people so fearfully when we still lived in Europe. This, while they also converted the entire Huron tribe right here in southern Ontario. Numerous Jesuit missionaries dying as martyrs, while the Christian villages they founded shone as a model of brotherly community, almost unsurpassed. What a strange mix of right and wrong, light and darkness, this way to go or that. How should a young guy like me ever figure it out? I kept on reading. Every man naturally desires knowledge, But what does knowledge avail without the fear of God? A humble, unlettered man who serves God is better than a proud philosopher who, neglecting his salvation, considers the course of the stars. He who knows himself well feels his own unworthiness, and shuns the praises of men. If I knew all things in the world, and had not charity, what would that profit me before God, who will judge me according to my deeds? Give up your inordinate desire for knowledge, for therein is often found useless worry and deceit. Learned men are anxious to be held in great esteem, and to be called wise. There are many things the knowledge of which is of little advantage to the salvation of the soul, and he is very unwise who busies himself with anything except God and the things which may serve him for his salvation. Many words do not satisfy the soul, but a virtuous life comforts the heart, and a pure conscience gives great confidence in God. The more you know, the more severely you will be judged, unless your life be more holy. An inordinate desire for knowledge. Leading a holy life. I had a funny feeling that Geert Groot, writing these words 600 years ago, must have known me intimately. I found it easy to pray about this, and without a doubt, I knew that once I would go back to the greenhouse, Randy and I would have more things to discuss. Through the Dorchester Library and its Britannica set, I learned a good bit more about Geert Groot and the Brothers of the Common Life, how they followed Christ and what they taught. Their teachings reminded me, somehow, of what I heard from the Society of Brothers and Art Gish. Clear instructions, obviously coming from Christ, but through whom, or how? Did it matter? Was I by any chance being deceived? All actual truth fits together. I suddenly remembered the voice of Ganpat Tulsi, the East Indian man from British Guiana that Norman worked for. In his conversations with Dad, he kept speaking of sacred truth, the kind of truth that is self-evident, the truth that all humans need to reckon with, no matter where it comes from, what religion it belonged to, or who first wrote it down. The truth that came from Jesus of Nazareth, Ganpat Tulsi had told us, is only one small segment, one leaf of an infinitely larger tree of knowledge, God's sacred truth, the truth that no one can deny. That sounded reasonable enough, but Ganpat, the dark-skinned elderly man with glasses, had kept right on talking. Sacred truth is the intuitive knowledge that all serious humans long for and discover if they seek it long enough, he said. Anyone can find it, no matter where. Abraham, a man from Ur in what is now Iraq in the Middle East, found it. So did the Zoroastrians of Iran, possibly even earlier than Abraham. More bits and pieces of the puzzle were discovered in China, in northern Africa, and India. Why, for instance, does the New Testament begin with the story of the wise men coming from the east? They were almost certainly Zoroastrians, for sure not Jewish. And what religion do you think Job belonged to? I don't know, Dad said. The story of Job teaches important things, but I have a suspicion it was actually an allegorical writing. I found that surprising, coming from Dad, but Ganpat agreed with him and continued. Truth comes naturally to all humans. It is born into every little child, into every animal and plant. Sacred truth runs the kingdom of God. It keeps our little planet spinning, our galaxies turning, and our boundless universe intact, no matter how much its enemies have tried to distort it. Did you ever hear of Sadhu Sundar Singh? He was a person I look up to. Yes, Dad told him. We heard about Sundar Singh in school. One of my teachers had served a term in India and told us about him, but our hope of everlasting life does not rest on wise sayings. It rests on the blood of Christ. That, to me, is true wisdom. I liked what Dad said. Distinctly Christian. Then he asked Ganpat, do you think that Christian truth is only one small part of an infinitely larger body of truth? And if that is the case, where is the rest of it? Doesn't the Bible lead to all truth? Jewish or Christian truth, Ganpat answered, is certainly true. I believe it all, but Christian truth is only one branch of the infinitely greater tree of sacred wisdom. From this branch have sprouted many smaller branches, and from these branches grow who knows how many leaves. These leaves are Christian truths discovered and known by Roman Catholics, Protestants, evangelicals, and all sorts of sects and plain people like you. Without a doubt, you also hang on to a few leaves on one small branch of truth. The more I thought about it, sacred truth, and how to find it, the more I felt like Adam and Eve, strolling through the Garden of Eden. So many delicious fruits to pick from, particularly attractive fruits that might make one wise, but aren't some of them poisonous? How much I wished I knew for sure what to believe and what not. Shouldn't I have at least one foot to stand on? In my search, I kept turning to prayer, day after day, and my unplanned holiday, I concluded by the end of February, had become a real spiritual workout.